Good evening, councillors, staff, members of the public. Please be upstanding for Her Worship Mayor Karen Vernon.
Good evening, everyone. It's now past 6:30. Actually, try and get it's 6:33 p.m. and I'll declare this ordinary council meeting of the town of Victoria Park is open. I'd like to invite Councillor Lindsay Miles to read the acknowledgement of country.
Nang Jerapim Wajak Nunga Buja Yakin Nidja Belia Bardak. I'm honoured to be standing on Wajak Nunga country on the banks of the Swan River. Nang Kadich Nunga Mort Kin Kadak Nidja Wajak Nunga Buja. Nang Kadich Nidja Nunga Burdia Kura Ye. Bordo Balapin Mordich Nunga Kadajin Mort Wabuja Ye. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land which continues to be important today. Nang Nunga Balapin Nunga Burdia were Mort Nijabuja. I thank them for the contribution made to the life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Please be seated. Formally, good evening, everyone. A note that we do have a packed public gallery tonight, so I apologise if chairs aren't available for everyone. If there's anyone who's currently standing who really needs a chair, please make that known to our council liaison officer, Sarah, who's sitting off to the end of the council chamber, and we'll endeavour to get you a seat because I don't want anybody standing who's not able to do that for however long they need to be here. Item 2 on our agenda is announcements from the presiding member. 2.1 is recording and live streaming of proceedings. In accordance with Regulation 14I of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, this meeting is being audio and video recorded and live streamed on the town's website. Under Clause 39(1) of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, I do not give permission for any other person to record the proceedings of this meeting. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image and voice may be live streamed to the public. Recordings are also made available on the town's website following the meeting. 2.2, public question time and public statement time. There are guidelines that need to be adhered to in our council meetings, and during question and statement time, people speaking are not to personalise any questions or statements about elected members or staff or use any possible defamatory remarks. In accordance with Clause 40 of our Meeting Procedures Local Law, a person addressing the council shall extend due courtesy and respect to the council and the processes under which it operates, and shall comply with any direction by myself as the presiding member. A person present at or observing a meeting shall not create a disturbance at the meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings, whether by expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. When the presiding member speaks during public question or statement time, any person who is then speaking is to immediately stop, and every person present is to preserve strict silence so that the presiding member may be heard without interruption. It is our usual practice to limit question time to 3 questions per person, and for public statement time to limit public statements to 2 minutes worth of speaking time. We do this to ensure that everyone who wishes to ask questions and make a statement has a fair and equal opportunity to be heard as everyone else who is in attendance. On occasions, like tonight, when we have a lot of people in the public gallery, we know that a lot of people would like to be heard, and I do ask that you respect the time limits that we do have imposed to make sure that your fellow members of the community get their opportunity to be heard as well. 2.3 is no adverse reflection. In accordance with Clause 56 of our Meeting Procedures Local Law, both elected members, which means the council, and the public when speaking are not to reflect adversely on the character or the actions of elected members of council or employees of the town of Victoria Park. 2.5 is the Mayor's report, and I wish to begin by congratulating the town staff on a fantastic start to the 2025 event season, which kicked off with a weekend double of the Lunar New Year night market on Friday the 7th of February, followed by the Twilight Soiree concert on Saturday the 8th of February. Huge crowds attended both events, which went off without a hitch, and I received many compliments from local residents who enjoyed the diverse cultural and artistic performances. Our thanks to Alicia, Jake and the Events and Communications team for all their hard work in making both events a success, and I ask that Mr CEO you convey Council's thanks to the relevant town staff, and also a thank you to Deputy Mayor Ife, who put her hosting skills to very good use as our MC at the Twilight Soiree on Saturday the 8th with the Perth Symphony Orchestra. Just a reminder for everyone that registrations are now open for the Town of Victoria Park's International Women's Day afternoon tea, which is a joint presentation by the town and the Victoria Park Community Centre. And also, to mark in your calendars our Harmony Week picnic, which will be held at Raymond Park in Lathlane on Friday the 21st of March, and the new Arts and Culture Festival, which will be holding at McCallum Park next to our new skate plaza on Saturday the 29th of March. The remainder of the Mayor's report covers my activities on behalf of our community from December 2024 through to February 2025, and this is a summary of those events. On the 11th of December, back in 2024, I attended a South East Corridor Council's Alliance meeting that was hosted by myself and the town. The key issues were a cybersecurity presentation from the Australian Signals Directorate and the progress of the Metronet Public Realm infrastructure works. Later that day, I attended a briefing for Mindarie Regional Council as its Deputy Chair. On 12 December, the CEO and I met with Ms Zanita Mascarenhas MP, the federal member for Swan, to launch our federal election advocacy. That was followed by attending the unveiling of the new entrance mural at Millen Primary School, which is sponsored by a town's art grant. And that night I attended the Mindarie Regional Council meeting held at the City of Perth. On 18 December, I participated in a WA Local Government Association seminar for the sector covering changes made to the new Local Government Reform Amendment Act for 2024. And that night, I was a guest of the Youth Ballet of WA at their Nutcracker end-of-year performance. The Youth Ballet of WA is based in Burswood. On 19 December, I chaired a special meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee to endorse our audited financial statements for the financial year ended 30 June 2024, where we achieved an unqualified audit opinion from the Office of the Auditor General. On 20 December, the CEO and I met with Ms Hannah Beasley, MLA, the member for Victoria Park, to launch the town's WA state election advocacy, seeking approximately $15 million worth of funding commitments towards our major community infrastructure projects. Ms Beasley in turn outlined her priorities for the seat of Victoria Park, citing cost of living relief and upgrades for local schools. Importantly, the construction of a motorplex at Burswood Park was not announced as one of her party's commitments for infrastructure within the town. On 21 December, along with the CEO, the Deputy Mayor Ife and Councillors Devereux and Miles, I attended Santa's Symphony at Burswood Park and officially opened the event together with the CEO of the Burswood Park Board. The town sponsored the WA Symphony Orchestra as the first year of a 3-year sponsorship agreement between the town and the Burswood Park Board for this annual event. And I have to say, WASO was sensational that night. On 19 January, I attended the Activate Mental Health celebration of their registration as a charity, some 7 years after they began operating in the town, as a community support group based on social activities. Today, they have over 6,000 members and have hosted more than 2,300 events. And in 2023, they were named the town's Community Group Champion of the Year. On the 28th of January, the CEO and I attended the Crown Perth Lunar New Year celebrations and participated in the tradition of Yi Sang, which is a prosperity salad toss. It was not a day for me to have worn a white jacket. On the 30th of January, I held a share with the Mayor afternoon tea at Connect Victoria Park with members of their village hub. And active discussions included the need for increased cleaning of Albany Highway, the Edward Millen Park redevelopment and concerns over the proposed motorsport street circuit at Burswood Park. On 5 February, I joined library staff in delivering about $1,000 worth of essential care products to the Star Street Uniting Church in Carlisle as part of our library's Book Amnesty Month. In lieu of paying overdue book fines, library members donated items to help those in need. The Star Street Uniting Church runs a community pantry to help those experiencing social and financial disadvantage in our town. Later that afternoon, the CEO and I met with the CEO and District Shopping Centres Manager of Hawaiian Group to discuss issues related to Hawaiian's Park Centre. That was followed by the CEO and I having a meeting with the new CEO and Corporate Events Manager of the Burswood Park Board Authority, where we discussed the management of the Burswood Park generally and associated issues such as parking and the impact of the proposed motorplex. On 7 February, the CEO and I met with Andra Biondi, the Liberal Party candidate for the state seat of Victoria Park in the WA state election. We outlined the state's election advocacy, seeking approximately $15 million funding commitments towards our major community infrastructure projects. Ms Biondi outlined her priorities for the state seat of Victoria Park as crime and safety, community engagement and supporting local projects. Later that night, along with councillors Devereux, Miles and Cruiser, I attended the town's Lunar New Year night market, which attracted a big crowd, as I said before, especially for the lion dancers, and we thank the Chungwa Association Lion Dance Group and the Yaolin Kung Fu Association for putting on the entertainment. On 8 February, along with Deputy Mayor Ife, I attended the town's Twilight Soiree at Raphael Park, which featured the Perth Symphony Orchestra playing the 1980s soundtrack to the Netflix TV series Stranger Things. It was, as it turned out, the soundtrack of my youth, and it seemed that a huge audience largely agreed with me. So we had a great night. On 10 February, Councillor Anderson and I met with representatives of the Victoria Park Xavier Hockey Club to discuss the Perth Hockey Centre redevelopment application at Curtin University. On 13 February, I joined the Perth Inner City Group's Urban Forest Tour, hosted by the town's place leader, Urban Forest, and community members of the town's Urban Forest Working Group as part of the Walga Urban Forest Conference. And I note some of those community members are in the audience tonight, so welcome to you. The tour took participants to our sump activation at 3 Merton Street, the Kent Street Ecological Corridor and the Bone and Upston Street Community Planting Project to learn about how our community is embracing and leading our urban forest strategy. And that evening I attended the Urban Forest Conference's welcome event hosted by the City of Perth. On the 14th of February, I attended the Walga Urban Forest Conference held at Murdoch University together with Councillor Devereux and a number of members from our Urban Forest Working Group. Over 40 experts and community tree champions presented the key challenges and opportunities facing the local government sector in addressing declining tree canopies, biosecurity threats like polyphagous shothole borer, and protecting trees on private property during building developments. And on 15 February, this Saturday just gone by, I held Share with the Mayor at the library. That completes the Mayor's announcements and the Mayor's report. Item 3 on our agenda is attendance, and tonight we have all elected members in attendance, save for Councillor Minson, who is on approved leave of absence. We have a number of members of the town's executive management who are assisting tonight's meeting, led by the CEO who sits to my left, Mr. Carl Askew. Item 4 on our agenda is declarations of interest. Mr. CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Yes, we have a number for tonight. Item 12.3, Deputy Mayor Ife, an impartiality interest. Several applicants are known to me. Item 15.3, also Deputy Mayor Ife, impartiality interest. I have worked with both Provider A and Provider B as part of previous CEO performance reviews. Item 17.1, Deputy Mayor Ife, impartiality interest. I am currently a board member of Burswood Park Board. Item 12.4, Councillor Anderson, impartiality interest. I have attended events held by Harold Hawthorne Community Centre. Item 12.3, yourself, Mayor Vernon, impartiality interest. A number of applicants for grants are known to me from attending meetings with their management or attending their events, namely Curate Arts Inc., Victoria Park Community Centre, Victoria Park Community Garden Association, Kensington Secondary School and Kent Street Senior High School. Item 12.4, again Mayor Vernon, impartiality interest. I have attended meetings with the board and the management of Harold Hawthorne Community Centre in previous years about their operating subsidy and attended events held by them. Item 14.2, myself, an impartiality interest. The allocation of a corporate credit card for the CEO is as per council policy. Item 15.2, again myself, a financial interest. This matter relates to my contract of employment and performance. Item 15.3, also myself, a financial interest. This matter also relates to my contract of employment and performance. Item 17.1, Councillor Anderson, an impartiality interest. I have received a significant amount of correspondence from impacted community regarding this item. Item 12.3, Councillor Crozer, an impartiality interest. Several of the applicants are known to me. Item 13.2, Councillor Crozer, an impartiality interest. I have discussed this item with members of the community. Item 17.1, Councillor Crozer, an impartiality interest. I have discussed this item with members of the community. Item 17.1, yourself, Mayor Vernon, an impartiality interest. I have had communications with members of the community who are opposed to the WA Government's election commitment to build a motorplex at Burswood Park. Item 12.3, Councillor Miles, an impartiality interest. Members of staff and members of the board of Vic Park Community Centre are known to me. Item 12.3, Councillor Devereux, an impartiality interest. I have attended events at the community centre and I am a member of the Vic Park Community Garden. And item 17.1, Councillor Devereux, an impartiality interest. I have received a large number of emails from residents concerned about the street circuit proposal for Burswood.
Thanks, Mr CEO. Are there any elected members who have interests they need to declare haven't yet done so? I'm going to go to Councillor Melrosa first and then Deputy Mayor Ife.
Item 17.1, impartiality interest. I've also received significant correspondence from members of the community about this item, and I've also discussed it with members of the community.
Thanks, Councillor Melrosa. Deputy Mayor Ife.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I put my declarations in at the beginning of the weekend, and since then I have an additional impartiality interest to add to 17.1, and that is that I've received extensive communication from community members on this item. Thank you.
All right, are there any other elected members? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, also 17.1, opposition to the motorsport street circuit at Burswood Park. Yeah, I've also received many emails and consulted with the community on this issue, and I have sent it through electronically, but just not in time for the agenda.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Also 17.1, I've received numerous emails from the community about this.
All right, thank you. Anybody else who's got an interest they have not yet declared? Just a reminder for those who've just declared their interests out loud in the meeting, before the meeting is over or just thereafter, can you please ensure that you've sent through a written notice of your declaration of interest? Thank you. Item 5 is public question time. So I am now going to open public question time at 6:50 p.m. The process that we follow here at the town is that we do encourage people to pre-submit questions that they may have, so that if those questions require answers from the town staff about technical matters, we can endeavour to get a full response ready for you when you come to a council meeting. After that, we go to a list that I have. Some of you might have been asked by our council liaison officer, Sarah, when you were outside waiting to come in, if you had questions to ask and to put your name down on the list if you did. I will go to the people on that list first, and once I've exhausted that list, I'll then offer it openly to every member of the public gallery who hasn't yet had an opportunity to ask questions, if they have any questions that they wish to ask. So going in that order, I'm going to invite Steve Milne to come forward and ask your questions, please. And the process for everyone is when you sit down, you can press the button on the microphone to switch it on. You need to state your name and your suburb only, please, which is a requirement under our meeting procedures local law. Mr. Milne.
Stephen Milne, Victoria Park. Thank you, Honourable Mayor and Council members. I've got a statement and 3 questions. Would you prefer me to start with the questions and then the statement later?
Public statement time is a separate item on the agenda. It happens after public question time is finished, so I would need to ask you to return to your seat after your questions, and then I'll call you back up during statement time. So we need to follow the order for the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 1. Tonight, a petition is going to be presented to the council. This petition centres on the central sub-precinct for the Albany Highway, the draft Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan. However, similar inconsistencies are spread throughout the neighbouring sub-precincts. Can the changes that this petition lists be adopted for other sub-precincts?
Thank you. I'm going to direct that question to the Acting Chief Community Planner, Mr Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, and thanks for your question, Mr Milne. Yes, staff are considering all submissions holistically across the Albany Highway precinct, regardless of whether it is focused on any specific sub-precinct. The petition has been received and the request to modify various interface treatments across the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan and to modify Table 23 regarding the Merton Street sump are supported in principle by town staff. It is anticipated that these recommendations will be presented for Council's consideration as part of the report on submissions at the May 2025 OCM.
Thanks, Mr Doy. Your next question, Mr Milne.
Thank you. Question 2. The town has provided feedback that a letterbox flyer drop was not conducted as part of its community engagement approach. This was quite evident while I was door knocking the streets of Merton, Gresham and Litchfield, as no one in the community had heard of the plan changes or the Albany Highway Precinct Plan. Given the importance and scale of these changes, the town has now recognised the shortfall in its communication with the community and has successfully applied to the WA Planning Commission for a 21-day extension to the reporting deadline, which will allow a letterbox drop. Can this extension please be increased to 42 days as per the original reporting period, which will help to ensure a consistent level of estimated community engagement?
Again, direct that question to Mr Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, and thanks for the question. Yes, the town sought permission from the West Australian Planning Commission to extend the reporting deadline to allow for the direct notices, the flyers, the letters to be issued and the opportunity for stakeholders to review the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan and make a submission. WAPC approved the requested 21-day extension and the letters have been sent on Monday 17th of February, so yesterday, advising that the Precinct Structure Plan is again open for comment until the 13th of March 2025. So the additional 21 days means the total overall advertising period for the Precinct Structure Plan is 91 days. To date, the Precinct Structure Plan community consultation has received 5,200 visits to Your Thoughts page and approximately 120 submissions. So we're satisfied that the 91-day period, which is well and truly over what we would normally do, is sufficient.
And your third question, Mr Milne.
Third question. To all councillors, would you please come and visit the 3 Merton Street Micropark and enjoy its beautiful, gorgeous green space and the efforts the urban forestry team have invested. While you're there, please enjoy the beautiful native verges and established native trees that the community has adopted as part of the urban forestry strategy. And please ask yourself, does building over these precious green spaces and scaling 5 to 8 storey developments directly opposite an R40 residential street the right for our community, the environment and the future?
Thanks, Mr Milne. That probably sounded a little bit more like a statement than an actual question to me, but obviously all elected members have heard your invitation to go to see the 3 Merton Street Micropark, and as you know, last week I met you there, so I did get the opportunity to see it up close and hear from you about it. But I think you should be comfortable that the answer Mr Doy gave you to your first question is that the town now is in principle looking to change that zoning with regards to the 3 Merton Street Micropark. But in any event, your presentation of your petition is coming up shortly on the agenda, and no decisions can be made about the subject matter of a petition until a report is brought back to council. So I'm sure Mr Doy and his team will be working on preparing a report that answers the substance of your petition, and hopefully that will tie in well with the progress of the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your questions. Now, I don't have any other pre-submitted questions, so I am now going to move to those people on the list who have indicated they wish to ask questions. Sam Zammit. Mr Zammit, are you wanting to come forward, please, and ask a question? I know it might be a bit hard to get out. We're full tonight, but take your time. Maybe we need to create a centre aisle, Mr Zammit. What do you think? Make it a little easier for you to get up to the front. Whenever you're ready, your name and suburb, and we'll have your first question, please.
I'm not used to all this popularity here. It's tremendous, isn't it? Lady Mayor, questions about Councillor Daniel Minson. I believe he was, the correct word is, awarded leave for when his wife gave birth to his first child, which is tremendous. But he had 3 months off with pay, is that right?
I'm not sure that I can answer the question for you about whether it was off with pay, but he was on parenting leave, which is now a statutory requirement that councillors and mayors throughout Western Australia are entitled to take up to 6 months of parenting leave from their council duties from the time of the birth of their child, whether they are the person who gives birth to the child or the partner of a person who gives birth to a child. And my understanding is that the legislation permits him to continue to receive his councillor allowance during that time. Whether he did so is a matter that should be able to be determined from the list of payments made per month, which I think you asked at a previous council meeting last year, and I'll just check with the Manager of Governance if we've got a formal answer to that question, because I think it was taken on notice last time. All right, we will take that on notice because the Manager of Governance doesn't have an answer for me at the moment, but there's an entitlement there, and the evidence of that will be in the monthly list of accounts paid, where we list all the monies that are paid out by the town. And if his name appears there with an amount per month, then he received his councillor allowance in that time. Do you have another question?
Excuse me. There's no water here. That's a statement. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I might ask if Ms Vader is able to get a glass of water for Mr Zammit, please.
I believe he had 3 months off for maternity leave. With all due respect, I haven't finished my question. And then he applied for a further 3-month leave. Now, do these councillors have to supply a reason? Now, this further leave, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I apologise, I believe it's for his political ambitions.
So, Mr Zammit, Councillor Minson didn't apply for 3 months leave and then apply for another 3 months leave.
I can hardly hear you.
Mr Zammit,
Yes.
Councillor Minson did not apply for 3 months leave and then another 3 months leave.
No?
He was not required to apply for any approved leave of absence for the birth of his child. That's automatically given to him now by legislation. So as soon as he notified the town CEO that his child had been born, he was automatically entitled, if he wished to do so, to take up to 6 months leave from his role as an elected member, and he chose to take up that option, but he returned to council for the last meeting of 2024. So he didn't use the whole 6 months as his child was born in mid to late July. Now, he has since applied, as he did in December last year, for a period of approved leave of absence, which council can grant, and his reasons for doing that are a matter that you'll need to direct to him. So he is currently on approved leave of absence until the middle of March. But if you want to know his reasons for seeking that, you'll need to speak to him because he's not required to offer a reason for seeking an approved leave of absence.
But I believe, the reason I'm asking is I believe that we're paying for his time off, but we'll leave it there. Could you tell me the reason why we have a paid personnel security at every meeting? Are we expecting problems or trouble, or what's the reason for this security person to be present at every meeting?
Direct that question to the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Askew.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Not sure of the exact reason, Mr Zammit, in terms of the decision that was made at the time. It is in place at the moment. It's currently under review.
It's under review, you say? Oh, Thank you. Now, there's been a lot of controversy over what the town has done to Archer Street. And I think there's possibly people here tonight expressing their concerns. Are you aware that the RAC has labelled it as one of 5 most dangerous streets now in WA?
Yes, Mr Zammit, I am aware of the release of the RAC survey just over a week ago, labelling Archer Street the second most dangerous street in the metropolitan area. So I am aware of that.
Is that of concern?
That's your 4th question. So you've now asked 3. So I'm afraid due to the number of people in the public gallery, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your seat. But I'm aware of the decision from the RAC survey, yes, as is the rest of the town.
I had a credit from the last meeting.
No credits, Mr Zammit. Good try,
Thank
though.
you.
Good try. Next on the list, John Collins. Please come forward, state your name and your suburb.
Oh, that one.
Do you want a light?
No,
I'll give you a light.
that's on. Good evening, Council and staff. My name's John Collins. I live in Carlisle. I did have 3 questions, and I think Sam must have stolen one of my questions concerning Archer Street and the bicycle pathway, mainly. So I'd like to ask the council, was there a preliminary survey of the expected number of usage of bicycles going on those 2 laneways up and down Archer Street? And if so, what were the numbers?
All right, I'll direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Thank you, through the chair. In relation to your first question, or first part of that question, there was modelling done. In relation to the actual numbers, I'll have to take that on notice and provide that later.
All right, so Mr Collins will take the second part of your compendious question on notice. What that means is you will get a formal response sent to you in due course, and at the next council meeting, the answer to your question will be in writing inside the agenda. And the reason we need to take it on notice is because it's a very specific piece of information and we'll need to find it for you and make sure we give it to you. We simply can't answer some of those technical questions in detail at meetings such as this.
Okay. My second question was about the RAC survey, which mentioned the Risky Road, and so that'll probably lead into my third question. Is there's a lot of congestion along Archer Street there, because those bicycle laneways have taken up 5 metres of the roadway, and there's a lot of traffic at the Orrong Road end, because people turning left to go into the city or the freeway on Orrong Road, they've got to queue up almost back to the post office. So that's one problem at that end. The other problem is with the bus stop outside the Lebanese restaurant opposite the liquor store.
Sorry, Mr Collins, do you have a question? Because I'm acutely aware of the number of people in the public gallery who are waiting to both ask questions and make statements. So I need to see if I can get you to focus in on the question that you'd like to ask, rather than giving us a lot of background.
Okay, right, sorry.
So if you're able to focus on that. If you had a question you wanted to ask about the RAC survey, you mentioned that being your second question, you're welcome to ask it, and then move to your next question, which I understand is now about congestion on the street.
Well, with the congestion question, I was going to mention the problem is with the bus laneway at in Archer Street, close to the roundabout in Orrong Road, because the bus laneway there has been severely reduced on both sides, and the bus stops traffic from passing. And the footpath is 7.3 metres wide where the bus stop is, and the laneway is only 3.5 on the actually, yeah, the laneway is 3.5. So there's a lot of people telling me, because I've lived over that way for about 30 years. I know a lot of people in the area, and a lot of people are not happy about that, and that's part of the danger, I guess.
You have a question about that though, Mr Collins?
I'm just saying,
because
are the council aware of that problem? That's probably my question.
we are aware of all of the community feedback with regards to Archer Street. I'll ask the Chief Operations Officer, is there anything that you can provide by way of information regarding Mr Collins's point about congestion on Archer Street as a result of the space being taken up by the bike lanes and the bus laneway?
Thank you. Through the chair, we are aware of the community concerns. I will say that the location of the bus stop was taken by PTA and was provided to the town, and that's part of the overall modelling that's done, including with the pedestrians, with the cyclists and vehicles. So it's in accordance with all of that, but we do understand there are concerns.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks Mr Collins, appreciate your coming. Vince Maxwell.
Turn it off.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors, and welcome to our new CEO, Mr Askew. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Good evening to you, sir. The question is, I've previously raised concerns about the town's capital works program and how the council intends to get it back on track. And this year, rates were increased by 8%, in part to support a $56 million capital works program. However, 6 months into the financial year, actual spending stands at just $7 million, far below the town's own projection of $22 million. This is out of the actual report in tonight's agenda. I've just put a couple of arrows. That's where we should be. That's where we are. It's quite a difference. When I asked about how the program will be brought back on track, the responses I received suggested there's no clear pathway or actions in place to address the shortfall, and no solutions was offered. The COO and the CFO responses are in the October minutes, but I'm not going to read them out. My question is to you, Mayor, as the leader of the council. What specific steps will you take to get this program back on track?
Thanks for your question, Mr Maxwell. I don't agree with you that the town's capital works program is either in shortfall or is running behind. As you're aware, we do have one of the biggest capital works programs that we have ever had, and they do include some very significant projects. One of those projects is already in a position of being deferred as we continue our advocacy for the remaining funding to start that project. There are other really large projects underway in the town, the McCallum Park Active Zone, the Edward Millen Park upgrade. These are between them projects valued at over $12 million out of that. One of those projects has already commenced and is underway. The other one is finalising, as I understand it, the contractual arrangements. Work on those projects begins, and then the contractors begin to submit their payment requests. And many of those large contracts take the full financial year to be delivered. So you won't necessarily see automatic progress from month to month showing that a really large project, which is not intended to be completed in a couple of days or even a month, will take some time to show that progress is being made. And although we may be 50% of the way through the financial year, there is still remaining months left for projects to be completed. And at that point in time, there will certainly be a clearer picture of how much of the capital works program has been delivered. However, to your point as to what I specifically am doing, I meet with the Chief Financial Officer fortnightly. In fact, we're due for our next meeting this Friday. We discuss the process on the capital works program. We currently have items on the budget tonight, and we will have the mid-year budget review coming to the March meeting to look at how many of these projects might be considered will not be able to be completed within the year. And we are about to begin our budget workshops for the 25-26 year. And when we do that, councillors will be asking keen, close questions about how we're managing the capital works program going forward. and we will be questioning the town staff about their projected capital works for the next financial year, including carryovers. So they're the steps that I'll be taking. Do you have another question?
Thank you for that. I'll just remind you that's not my projection, that's the town's projection.
Mr Maxwell, your second question, please.
Last year, the auditor reported that the town had failed to follow its procurement procedures, identifying 992 instances where purchase orders were issued after invoices were received, totalling over $10.9 million. This year, the auditor's findings have not been made public. At the special council meeting on February the 3rd, 5 documents were listed, yet only 2 have been made available to the public. In previous years, these documents were released fully. When will the remaining 3 documents be made publicly available, as has been the standard practice?
Direct that question to the Chief Financial Officer, Mr Auld.
Ultimately is up to the Audit and Risk Committee to decide if those are released, but my recommendation is they wouldn't. Some of those findings may relate to confidential IT matters, security, for example. Others are very operational findings of perhaps very low risk. I do note that the audit this year was completed by 31st of December, and we had minimal findings that were published.
And your last question, Mr Maxwell?
So the answer to that was they're not going to be released, is that what he's...
No debate, Mr Maxwell. Just move on to your next question. You
just wanted
heard the
some
answer.
clarification.
Well, you can
Okay.
follow that up with the Chief Financial Officer after the meeting, but do
Okay,
you have
I will.
another
Thank
question?
In 2021, the council resolved to withdraw $7 million from the Future Fund Reserve to break out of a contract with the Mindarie Regional Council Resource Recovery Operator Sewers. As you know, the stated purpose of the Future Fund Reserve is to assist in funding initiatives and purchases that diversify the revenue streams of council. Nearly 4 years have passed since that decision. Can the council clearly identify where the resulting revenue stream from that expenditure is reflected in their town's accounts?
We'll take that question on notice. Thanks, Mr Maxwell. And thanks for your questions tonight. Appreciate you coming forward. Next on the list, Denise Clements. Please come forward, state your name and your suburb, please.
My name is Denise Clements. I am living in the town of Vic Park at the Burswood precinct. My question is in regards to, and it's pretty trivial, I think, in the artificial turf, whether or not the council are going to change their stance on artificial turf. In our area, we had Mirvac looking after the maintenance of our parkways, and when that changed over to Vic Park, the maintenance of our lawns and gardens went completely downhill. 5 of our residents down there changed the lawn, a 3x3 piece of lawn, to artificial turf. We were then cited by the council that that was not appropriate. So we want to know whether or not the council would change their stance on artificial turf. 2 members from the Vic Park Council came and saw us and stated that, yes, we could pull out the turf and we could replace it with concrete or brick pavers. Now, I don't know which is worse, the artificial turf or brick pavers. So I was wondering if the council were going to change their stance on artificial turf in the area.
All right, thanks for your question, Ms Clements. I'll go to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams. Is there any plan to bring a report to council to change the long-standing position against artificial turf in the town or town-owned land? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. In relation to your question, no, it's not on our current radar. Artificial turf is not, and I appreciate it is historically not an approved material, as you found out. As to whether council will change it, that's really up to council, but at this stage, the town administration has no plan to bring a report.
All right, so the town staff don't plan to submit a report to council suggesting we should pass such a resolution, but I would point out, Ms Clements, that having artificial turf on town verges and town land would be inconsistent with the town's urban forest strategy, which supports natural turf. So that's the answer to your question. Do you have another question?
The only other question is that there is already artificial turf outside the 3Bs and the cafe that has been there for years, and that has not been removed.
So, Ms Clements, I can't comment on artificial turf that might be outside those particular businesses because I don't know if that turf was on those locations when it was managed by Mirvac, but the plaza area between the two main central towers is actually not the town of Victoria Park's land. It's actually privately owned by the strata companies of both of those towers, apartment towers. Therefore, it's not town verge land.
Okay.
But as Ms Adams pointed out, it's been a long-standing position of the town not to support artificial turf, but there are some people in the town in some places where there is artificial turf on their verges because their approval was part of planning approval granted long before the town changed its policy. And so we haven't retrospectively ordered those people to remove things that they had permission to do. So that's as much information as I can give you, but you are welcome to contact individual councillors and seek to persuade them of your view about artificial turf and encourage them to change the policy. That would be the formal way to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming along asking those questions. That is the last of the people who managed to put their names down on this list. So now I'll ask those in the public gallery. Is there anyone who wishes to ask any questions for the remainder of public question time? This is your opportunity to do so if you've got questions. Yes, gentleman up the back first, and then there's a gentleman seated. Sorry, I need you to come forward. Sorry, I can't hear you from the back. If I can get you to come forward to the microphone at the front and just state your name and your suburb, and then you'll be able to ask your questions.
I was asking, was it appropriate?
Sorry, just your name and suburb, sir. Thank you.
Did you get that? Okay.
I heard Richard Stevens, Burswood.
Thank you. I was asking first, is it appropriate to ask these questions now or wait till the agenda item 17?
No, this is the only chance for members of the public to ask questions and speak is during public question time and public statement time, because once that's concluded, the council will begin its business and its debate. And for the benefit of those in the public gallery, I will be bringing item 17.1 forward to the beginning of the council's business agenda. So after we're finished with public statement, question and statement time, the first order of business will be to deal with 17.1 because those of you who are here for 17.1 may not wish to sit through all of the other items before 17.1. So this is your chance, Mr Stevens.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. And I do commend the council for its motion on item 17. There were 3 points or 3 questions I would like actually added to your submission to the state government on this. And the first one regarding noise, and is the council aware that the stadium, while designed to keep noise in, is not designed to keep noise out? The external cladding is metal and glass and will reflect and amplify any noise that comes from the racetrack or indeed the auditorium, and that will affect councils from Bayswater through Stirling, Perth, South Perth, obviously yourselves, ourselves and Belmont. And particularly when the Belmont Park development is complete, you'll get a double reflection of an amplification of noise from those buildings, which will, I think, severely impact the neighbourhood farther wide, and I'd like that put in.
So sorry, Mr Stevens, I just do need to be clear, and you might have missed my directions to everyone at the very beginning of the meeting. This is public question time only, which means statements that you would like to make about, for example, what you would like to see us do. They need to be made during public statement time, and that's a separate time on the agenda item to now. So if you wanted to ask the question, is council aware that Optus Stadium that particular building, you said, is not made to keep noise out. Is that right? It's made to keep noise in. I can certainly ask that question of the administration because I don't know the answer to that question. But if you weren't intending to have me answer that question, you just want to see this included as part of the motion, that to me is a statement that you are welcome to make during public statement time, noting that there are people already in the gallery who are ahead of you in the order to make their statements.
No, that's fair enough. And my second question is, the council aware that the remnant of the Burswood Canal runs through and will be impacted by the racetrack?
So on that basis, I'm going to go to the Acting Chief Community Planner, Mr Doy, about that, noting that the Burswood Canal is recognised by the town. It is in our municipal heritage inventory, and we did a couple of years ago upgrade its status to higher than where it sat in terms of its heritage significance. But I'll go to Mr Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I think you might have answered the question for me there. Yes, we are aware about the Burswood Canal. Yep.
So we are aware that that's there, and not a lot of people know about the history of the Burswood Canal, but we certainly have researched it and it's well documented for us.
And my third question is, and I don't know if the council has a plan for net zero or carbon reduction, but if so, how would this development affect what the council wishes to do to achieve net zero?
All right, so while that's a two-part question, it is true, we do have a plan for net zero. We have a climate emergency plan that was adopted by Council in 2021. I might ask our Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams, the introduction of a motor racing street circuit into the town of Victoria Park's area, does the town have any view about what, if any, impact that will have on Council's plan to reduce emissions within the town towards net zero? Ms Adams?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I suppose in relation to your question, we control what we can control and influence what we can influence, depending on how this goes, and as part of our submission on the effects that we see. I can only hazard a guess at this stage it would be a negative impact and not in line with our policy, but as to how that plays out and what they can actually do about that and how that is mitigated would have to be seen.
So, Mr Stevens, our climate emergency plan does focus on principally the town's operations and what generates our emissions. It is clearly the case that carbon emissions are generated from motor vehicle use by everyone who drives around in a motor vehicle that uses fossil fuels in the town. My understanding of V8 supercars is that they're not usually electric vehicles, they're usually fossil fuel consuming cars, so one might logically expect that there will be pollution from the use of those vehicles. But I would say this, as a rider at this stage, I've not been made aware of any details of how that level of pollution and carbon emissions will be addressed by the WA government who plans this project and this motorplex. So I don't know how they plan to do it, but it certainly would be inconsistent with our plan to reduce carbon emissions within the town of Victoria Park.
Thank you.
Thank you for your three questions. Is the gentleman, I think, was seated in the back row, if you'd like to come forward. Yep. And just please state your name and your suburb, and then we'll hear your questions.
Thank you. Button on the right. Hi, Jerry Milford, Lathlane. Good evening, everyone. My question is in relation to the proposed installation of speed bumps on Rutland Avenue in Lathlane. As we all know, road treatments on Rutland Avenue will cause traffic to go to other roads in Lathlane, and in particular Gallipoli Street. And I note that speeding has been detected on Rutland Avenue over the past 10 years. However, has the town taken into account the level of road accidents that have occurred on Rutland Avenue and Gallipoli Street over the past 10 years?
I'm going to ask that question first because I want to make sure if you've got if you've got your three questions that are rolling together,
I've got three questions.
Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the Chair, our short answer is the town has taken into account crash and speed data in the modelling that's been done on both Rutland Ave and the surrounding streets.
In particular crash data, because I've been in the area for many decades and Rutland Avenue has not been an area for accidents, whereas we've seen at least 4 accidents in the past 12 months on Gallipoli Street, including a fatality.
Mr.
Sorry, no, that's question 1. It's interesting to note that the town has cited evidence of speeding being detected as early as 2014 as justification for speed humps, but it's only now that the town sees fit to install these treatments immediately. And so if the town has not considered the likely impact, that was going to be my second question, of increased traffic on Gallipoli Street, will it do so before hastily proceeding with the installation of these speed bumps?
I'll direct that question to Ms Adams.
Sorry, Mayor, may I just ask for clarification on the actual question?
Oh, just in simply, you've probably answered it in the first question about taking into consideration the contrast between road accidents on Rutland Avenue and perhaps the severity and the number of accidents on Gallipoli Street, because that's where the traffic's going to go. So will you take that into consideration?
Ms Adams?
That's it.
So, yes, that was the first part of my question, that yes, we've taken that into consideration, but there was a second question that I thought was to do with the actual...
severity of accidents too, probably.
I think, Mr Milford, my recollection was that you were asking how likely we would take this information in, given that we detected speed issues and nothing has occurred since 2014.
It actually says if the town has not, if the town has not considered the likely impact of increased traffic on Gallipoli Street, will it do so?
All right,
But
Ms Adams?
you said that you already have.
Sorry, yes, through the chair, the answer is yes, and that has been taken into account already. So in terms of asking will it do so, we have done traffic modelling on the current levels and the projected levels of traffic, the volumes.
Okay, and I've just
have a third question?
Yes, I have a question. A third question. It's only come up because of the issue of Archer Street that was mentioned before. And I noticed that you've mentioned or promised to one of the earlier gentlemen that you'll provide data on the actual number of cyclists using Archer Street. And I just wanted to clarify that you'll include only those cyclists that are using the lanes, because I've seen, only cyclists I've seen in the last few months have been ones cycling the wrong way on one traffic lane and others riding up the street despite the cycle lanes. So I've never actually seen anyone in the cycle lane. So if you're doing any stats, please just include those ones that are actually using the lanes properly, because I've never seen one.
So Mr Milford, I just need to encourage you, please try to confine it to questions, not actually statement time. I know that you're passionate about this, but when the town conducts modelling and it goes out and does surveys, it uses accepted methods of surveying, and that will show the number of people who are cycling on the road. My expectation would be both inside and outside the protected lanes. And whilst it is common to hear members of the community say, I've never seen anyone cycling in the lanes, I've yet to meet a person alive who sat on Archer Street and watched who cycles in the bicycle lanes 24 hours a day without sleeping. So, Mr Milford,
regular users
in fairness, I've answered your question. This is not a debate. I don't want to debate the answer with you. The town will use an accredited method for surveying the number of cyclists using it. Thank you. Thanks so much for coming along. That's your 3 questions.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else who has any questions that they wish to ask? Otherwise, I'm going to close public question time and move to public statement time. So I'll now close public question time at 7:31 p.m. and go to item 6 on the agenda, which is public statement time, which I now open at 7:31 p.m. I have 2 pre-submitted statements. I understand both people are here. I'm going to call them in order before I go to people who have indicated they would wish to make a statement. The first of those persons is Casey Greenfield. If you'd like to please come forward, state your name and your suburb. I understand your statement relates to item 17.1 on the agenda. Just need to press the button on the microphone. There's 2 in front of you. You can press one of those. If it's not working, we'll just get our council liaison officer.
That's it.
And just a reminder, because of the number of people who are here, we're sticking to the 2-minute limit and we will be timing that. So try to be as fair to everyone as I can be.
Casey Greenfield, Burswood. Members of council, I'm totally opposed to the state government's waste of money on the proposed motorsport street circuit at Burswood Park. This will have significant impact on the environment through the destruction of animal and plant habitats. This land has been set aside by the Burswood Park for a 20-year vision. Part of this vision is a gathering place for shared, meaningful connections to land, heritage and culture. Motorsport does not form part of this strategy. The town's mission lists social, economic and environment, a moving statement that would tear the very meaning of this with such a proposal. There was no consultation from the public, and I believe there was none given to the town of Vic Park. As a person who resides and works in the town, if this proposal was implemented, it would have a significant toll on my family's health and well-being, and am considering moving away for my peace. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Greenfield. Next on the list, who's pre-submitted a statement, is Steve Milne. Please come forward.
Thank you, Honourable Mayor and Council members, and special thanks to Councillor Cruiser and Councillor Minson for their support with the presenting of the petition. This petition was created due to an overwhelming community concern regarding the draft Albany Highway Precinct Plan. The community understands the necessity of development, especially in today's housing crisis, but the draft plan lists a number of changes that are in opposition to its own key objectives, which has our community extremely worried. Examples are listing micro parks and sumps for residential development. I provide you all an extract of the draft plan highlighting 3 Merson Street, which recently was showcased in the town's Wolga tour. In its place, the town's design concept shows a 5 to 8 storey mid-rise development. Another example is the transition from 8 to 5 storey mid-rise developments in Zone CE2 directly onto R40 residential streets. This transition is against another key objective of sensitively responding to lower density residential streets and maintaining adequate solar access, and is not consistent with other transitions in neighbouring sub-precincts. In response to these inconsistencies, the community respectfully requests 4 changes that will harmonise the draft plan's key objectives with the central sub-precinct controls. These changes respectively manage the development with the existing residents, adjacent R40 zone residential neighbourhoods, and most importantly, our natural environment. Once this plan is approved, it will shape the future for Victoria Park. We have the time to get it right. Please listen to your community and be a beacon for sustainability, sensitivity and the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Milne. Spot on 2 minutes. You timed that right down to the second, so I appreciate that very much. Next on the list to make a statement, Sam Zammit. Please come forward.
Sam Zammit. I'd like to compliment one of your staff, John Wong. He really went out of his way to fulfil one of my requests on behalf of people that use needles on a frequent basis. Unfortunately, he misunderstood me and he's put a box. It took some time to get through all your officers, whoever had to be involved in it. But I requested a box or a tin or a bucket that you could throw your, let's say you're diabetic. After you got a quantity, you could just chuck them in. But unfortunately, he misunderstood me, and we've got a syringe disposal box. But further to this, I want to thank Mr. Wong for his efforts. It's really appreciated. But I just want to pass this information on to people that do use needles and they live in our town. I rang several well, not several, 2 or 3 medical government departments, and I came up with a number which you can refer to me if you want some more information on it. I was told that you can collect your needles. They didn't say anything about syringes, the needles, and put them in any plastic container. Let's take that for instance, be a cordial bottle or a milk bottle, as long as it's got a top one. You can put all your needles in there, and when it's full, half full, I prefer to do it when it's full because it's less plastic. And I was told you can put it in legally in your green bin. Now, you may not agree with that, and if you don't, feel free to ring me up. If a lady answers the phone, it's my wife, not my secretary.
Mr. Zammit, I won't wait to ring you up. I'll tell you now. Please do not put needles in any of the town's bins.
Sorry, I can't hear you, love.
Residents. I won't wait to call you up, Mr. Zammit. I will tell you now. Please do not put any needles or any receptacles containing needles in any of the town's rubbish bins that are given to residents. You need to dispose of needles appropriately, and in the town's rubbish bins is not one of those
That's
ways.
what I was told.
All right. Well, I've just let you know my position on it. Thank you for your statement. You've passed the 2-minute mark. So we appreciate you making that statement and giving us that information. Next on the list for a statement, Vince Maxwell.
Vince Maxwell, Vic Park. I have concerns regarding the adequacy of the town's record-keeping system. You may recall that I previously raised a question about the funds collected through the cash in lieu of parking scheme and their subsequent use. Initially, the town denied that any money had been collected. However, in October last year, the town publicly admitted that such funds had indeed been collected, and the minutes reflect that the town stated that cash in lieu has been spent from the relevant account on car parking and or transport-related projects. The Ratepayers Association lodged a Freedom of Information request to obtain the details of the funds collected and to trace where they were spent. The response we received from the town was that all relevant documents had been destroyed or disposed of. If that is accurate, then I must ask, on what basis did the town claim in October that the money had been spent on car parking and transport projects when no records exist to substantiate this? Did they make this claim up, or do records actually exist that the town claims to have destroyed? This is a grave matter. Funds that have been held in reserve have vanished, and the town cannot account for where they went. Given the severity of this issue, I believe it warrants an independent investigation, possibly by the Crime and Corruption Commission. If the council does not feel compelled to initiate this investigation, I will consider to take it upon myself to ensure that the proper authorities are involved. It's up to you, council.
Thanks, Mr. Maxwell. Next on the list, Susan Burville. Please come forward, state your name and your suburb, please.
Good evening, Susan Burville, Burswood. So we have been told by the state government that a race circuit will be built in Burswood Park, and this with no community consultation whatsoever. The proposal will destroy the calm, beautiful green space enjoyed by many. It will be extremely detrimental effect on the bird life in the area, not to mention the little small turtles that we have. The noise pollution for residents will be soul-destroying. Everyone, everywhere should be free to live in their home without an environment of extreme noise and pollution. Suffice to say, I, along with over 2,400 who have signed the petition to save Burswood Park, reject the street circuit and all it entails, and I would support the council should they refuse to go along with this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Burville. Next on the list, Sue Quinn.
Susan Quinn from Burswood. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to express my support of the motion raised by Mayor Karen Vernon opposing the Labor government's election commitment to build a motorsport street circuit at Burswood Park should they be returned to government on the 8th of March. I understand that the announcement made by Premier Roger Cook on the 12th of January came as a complete surprise to this council, as it was to the residents of the Burswood Peninsula, who were absolutely shocked to hear it, as we had not been given the courtesy of any form of consultation or notification in advance. My husband Chris and I have lived on the Burswood Peninsula for over 16 years now, and in that time we have seen significant changes to the area, watching it transform from a peaceful golf course to the vibrant entertainment precinct it is today. We've seen the evolution of many new attractions and events in the park, and all of this activity has been embraced by the local community. However, plans to transform Burswood Park into a racetrack that requires most of the parklands and wildlife habitats to be destroyed, and that will create unprecedented levels of noise and air pollution is beyond belief. In addition to the environmental issues, the impact on traffic and pedestrian movements in the area is also of great concern. I understand that the town of Victoria Park may not have a direct say in what is being proposed at Burswood Park. However, we trust that council will support us by objecting to the proposal in the strongest way possible. Our community started a petition against the proposal on 21st of January and have almost 2,500 signatures already opposing the destruction of Burswood Park and displacement of its beautiful wildlife in favour of a noisy, air-polluting racetrack, highlighting the community's outrage at what has been proposed. We applaud the support and efforts of our Mayor Karen Vernon in opposing the racetrack proposal and thank her for moving the motion not to support the Labor government's plans to build it in Burswood Park. We sincerely hope she receives the support of all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms Quinn. Appreciate your statement. Robin Harvey, please come forward, state your name and your suburb.
Robin Harvey, Claysbrook Cove, East Perth. I'm here about motion 17.1 as well. I'm here to observe democracy at its core, which we have not been given the choice to give our expressions of disgust at what the Labor government has done. I really, really want to thank the town of Victoria Park and the Mayor herself for putting this motion. The residents of Claysbrook Cove are also directly affected by this proposal. We experience significant noise across the river. We walk along Burswood, the river. We enjoy the amenity of the area. It is our breathing space. A motorsport complex is completely against this. The residents of Claysbrook Cove have banded together. We have written to all the politicians we can think of. We've communicated with Libby Mettam. We are doing our very best to make our disgust known. You're our first hope. So please support your Lord Mayor, who's been very brave. And I want to thank all the people of Burswood for being here. It is wonderful to see. We felt quite alone, but we've banded together with the Burswood community and we don't feel alone anymore. And we hope the power of the people will get us somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Harvey. Next on the list, Jerry Pruitt.
Jerry Pruitt, Victoria Park. I was absolutely astounded when I read about the Burswood Motorplex proposal on a social media post. To say it came out of the blue is an understatement. Where was the public consultation for this project? There was none. State government has foisted this on the residents of the town in the same way that the council merger proposal were dropped on WA residents by the previous government. I walk alongside this site 3 or 4 times each week, observing the birds, waterfowls and watching nesting swans. Building infrastructure to accommodate a race circuit does nothing to aid the town's urban forest strategy, so carefully developed with the community. I also query whether any consideration has been given as to the shape of the Crown Towers building. It has a concave frontage facing the river and acts as a massive loudspeaker, reflecting and amplifying sound back onto and across the river. It is loud when the motorboats are on the river. Goodness knows what it will be like with cars. I trust that our elected officials will be letting our state government that this thought bubble should go back whence it came. Maybe we can have street racing around Government House up on the hill, or maybe around Kings Park.
Thank you, Mr Pruitt. Next on the list, James Whitehouse.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon and councillors. James Whitehouse from Burswood. As a resident of the town of Victoria Park for over a decade now, I would like to also make a statement about the proposed racetrack. I was going to make the statement about the destruction of the trees and the green habitat and the local wildlife, which I think some of my colleagues have also said very, very strongly about. I will also include the potential destruction of one of the earliest public works ever undertaken in the Swan River colony, dating back to the 1830s, as you very rightly pointed out. The fact that that would actually be destroyed or potentially destroyed is another crime on this list. We already have issues with street racers in the area. We've had numerous issues on a Monday night where they go racing around this circuit. The police have been involved. We know that we've had complaints lodged with yourselves and discussions with yourselves about this. Creating a racetrack is only going to draw more people into this area. It's going to make it more risky. They're going to have more idiots wanting to drive the circuit. Look at the area around that. We have a huge area of people that access public transport. We've got the Matagarrett Bridge. We've got the access to 2 train stations. All will be affected by that. There will be people walking and there will be idiots driving. This is a major safety risk, which I do not believe that the state government have even thought about. My last statement is around the carbon footprint, which again has been previously mentioned. The Town of Victoria Park's mission is in direct contradiction to this proposal, and I hope all councillors will oppose this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Whitehouse. Now, that's the last of the people whose names were written down, but of course some of you came in possibly after we had concluded sending the list around. Is there anyone else in the public gallery who wishes to make a statement? This is your opportunity to do so. Anybody? No? Oh, lady over there. Please come forward, state your name and your suburb.
I'm Melissa Vernon. I'm not known to the Mayor
I was going to say, no, we're not related, but lovely to meet you. There's not that many of us Vernons out there.
But we're standing up. So, look, I spent many months looking for somewhere that was peaceful, safe, with extensive green space and access to the river and wildlife for families and others for entertainment and gathering and exercise. I came from the country. I work in healthcare 10 to 12 hours a day. The space is incredibly important to me, as it is to many others. Green space and environment is a priority, not only for the residents but the visitors, for physical and mental well-being, as well as for the care of bird life, animals and others in the area. So I seek council's support of Mayor Vernon's motion to maintain urban green space. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Vernon. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a statement? This is your opportunity because, as I say, we'll shortly be debating this motion. So if there is anyone else who is waiting to make a statement, this is pretty much it. All right, well, nobody else is indicating they want to make a statement, and that could very well be because you consider that others have already said more than enough on your behalf, and so we do understand that. Thank you. So on that basis, I'm going to close public statement time, at 7:52 p.m. And I do thank everyone who took the time tonight to come and speak to us about matters that are important to you. If they're important to you, they are important to us. And I say that not as a platitude, but that is a part of our mission at the town. So there are 2 items on the agenda that are very brief and short that will be dealt with by electronic voting. The receipt of a petition, and then we'll come to the method of how we'll deal with tonight's business, and that's when I'll be moving to bring item 17.1 forward. So if you just bear with us for a couple of minutes while we deal with those items on the agenda, we will get to 17.1. So item 7 on our agenda is the confirmation of minutes and receipt of notes from any agenda briefing forum. That recommendation is currently on the overhead screen. Elected members can see that. Can I now please call for a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation, please? Nothing's come up. So that's moved Councillor Devereux, seconded Councillor Hamer. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8 is presentation of minutes from external bodies. There are minutes of 4 external bodies that are recommended for Council to receive. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for that recommendation? That's moved by Councillor Hamer, seconded by Councillor Cruiser. For those who are wondering where the information is, it is coming in electronically. It will shortly upload into the system. Formally, is there any dissent to the receipt of these minutes? No, there being no dissent, declare that also carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item 9 on our agenda, which is presentations. 9.1, we have the presentation of a petition bearing 82 signatures, 72 of them verified and 20 of them unverified. The recommendation is that Council 1 receive the petition from Mr Steve Milne requesting that Council make the following amendments to the draft Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan. A, change the zoning boundary along Merton Street, Victoria Park to CE1 Central Sub-Precinct Plan 2.3. B, change bonus building heights of CE1 from 5 to 4 stories, Table 3 Central Sub-Precinct Primary Controls. C, sensitively manage the redevelopment, including activation of the urban forest strategy by adding requirements for native flora landscape setbacks and native verge conversion, section 3.4.4. D, change the status of 3 Merton Street Sumpen Micro Park from development to open space biodiversity, table 23. Secondly, request the CEO to respond to the petition as part of administration's response to the submissions received during the public advertising of the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan. And 3, request the CEO to advise Mr Steve Milne in writing of the date that administration will present to Council the Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan and its response to public submissions. Can I call please for a mover? Moved Councillor Cruiser, thank you. And a seconder for the petition, Councillor Hamer, thank you. I'm going to formally ask, is there any dissent to the receipt of the petition from elected members? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. So, Mr Milne, your petition is received, and so now the matters that are in the recommendation will come into place. So I thank you on behalf of Council for bringing this to our attention. 9.2 on the agenda is presentations. We have none. 9.3 is deputations. We have none. Item 10 on the agenda is method of dealing with agenda business. Now, there does need to be some following of this by elected members. We have a long list of items on the agenda that it is being proposed we will adopt tonight by exception resolution, which means they will not be open for debate, and the remaining items will be dealt with separately. I will read through them. For elected members, if you hear an item that you do not wish to have dealt with by exception resolution, you'll need to let me know at the end of the list and we'll take it out. So these are the items to be dealt with by exception resolution. 11.1 Council Resolution Status Report January 2025. 12.2 Application for Development Approval for Change of Use from Group Dwelling to Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation at 63 Mackey Street, Victoria Park. 12.4 Operating Subsidies 2025 to 27 Round 1. 12.5 Mindera Advisory Group Terms of Reference for Endorsement. 12.6 Business Advisory Group Terms of Reference. 12.7 Draft Community Benefit Strategy 2025 to 2029. 12.8 Access and Inclusion Advisory Group Terms of Reference for Endorsement. 12.9 Notice of Motion Options for Permitting Play Equipment on Verges. 12.10 Integrated Transport Program Working Group Terms of Reference. 13.2 Western Australian Local Government Association Sustainable Energy Project. 13.2 Lathlane Precinct Redevelopment Project Zone 1, Stage 2 Advocacy and Contractual Updates. 14.2 CEO Credit Card. 14.3 Schedule of Accounts November 2024. 14.4 Schedule of Accounts December 2024. 14.5 Financial Statements November 2024. 14.6 Financial Statements December 2024. 14.7 Award of Insurance and Risk Management Services Contract. 15.1 Interim CEO KPIs Report of Acting CEOs. Is there any item that anyone wishes to have taken from that list? Councillor Hamer.
Can I have 13.2, please, Mayor Vernon?
Yep, we will take 13.2 off that list. Just give the Minutes Secretary a moment to remove that if she can, please, from the recommendation. And point 2 of this recommendation is that item 17.1 be brought forward to the start of the items of agenda for the convenience of the meeting. We've managed to remove 13.2. Take it there are no other items to be removed. Can I seek a mover and seconder, please, for this recommendation? Moved Councillor Melrosa, seconded Councillor Hamer. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to item 17, which is motion of which previous notice has been given. Item 17.1 is a motion put up by myself in opposition to a motorsport street circuit at Burswood Park. My motion is that Council 1 does not support the construction of a motorsport street circuit, which I've called a motorplex, at Burswood Park because A, it will have negative impacts on the natural environment, including the Swan River and wetlands, the loss of public open space, tree canopy and wildlife habitat and carbon emissions. B, it will have significant negative impacts on the surrounding residential communities, including noise, odour and light pollution, traffic congestion and loss of amenity. C, it is not included in the Burswood Park Board's 20-year vision for the future entertainment precinct at Burswood Park, prepared with community consultation. D, there has been no community consultation with the residents of the town who will be impacted or with the town itself. E, there has been no disclosure of a feasibility study, environmental impact assessment, business case demonstrating a need for a motorplex in this location or project costings. 2, that Council endorses the Burswood Park Board's 20-year vision for the future of Burswood Park released in 2024, which does not include a motorplex. 3, requests the Mayor and CEO to engage in advocacy after the WA state election with the Premier of Western Australia, relevant government ministers and the Member for Victoria Park as to A, why the town does not support construction of a motorplex at Burswood Park, B, the need for appropriate consultation by the WA Government with the town of Victoria Park and its community prior to making any decision to proceed with construction of a motorplex, Burswood Park, and 4, requests the CEO to report to the Ordinary Council meeting in May 2025 about the progress of any advocacy pursuant to point 3 above. In its shortest form, my reason for moving this motion is that in July 2024, Council endorsed its advocacy priorities for 2024-25 ahead of the upcoming state and federal elections. These priorities do not include supporting construction of a motorplex at Burswood Park. On 12 January 2025, without any public engagement or consultation with the residential communities surrounding Burswood Park or with the town of Victoria Park, Premier Roger Cook announced an election commitment to build a $217.5 million motorsport, street circuit and entertainment precinct at Burswood Park if re-elected at the WA election in March. The Motorplex is not a part of the Burswood Park Board's 20-year vision for the future of Burswood Park. It is likely to have significant negative social and environmental impacts on the natural environment and the residential communities living near Burswood Park. Neither those communities nor the town have been consulted about the Motorplex proposal. An online public petition commenced on 21 January 2025 opposing the Motorplex has already attracted approximately 2,000 signatures. Community reactions to the announcement, combined with the town's lack of knowledge about this proposal, indicates the need for proper public engagement and consultation before any further action is taken. This notice of motion will provide an important opportunity for our council to make the community and the public aware of council's position, the lack of consultation and the need for proper community consultation before any further commitment is made by the future WA government to build a motorplex at Burswood Park. I understand, Councillor Anderson, that you wish to second my motion.
Yes, please, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So be recorded that Councillor Anderson is a seconder for the motion. So the motion is now on the floor. What I do want to say is that in January I returned from overseas leave to the very disturbing and horrifying news of the announcement of a motorplex to be located at Burswood Park. I spent many, many hours at Burswood Park over many years. It is undoubtedly a jewel in the town of Victoria Park's environmental crown, and we're lucky to have a few good jewels in our environmental crown. We can't afford to lose any of them. We have a public open space strategy which focuses on enhancing the public open space that we already have. And whilst the Burswood Park public open space is managed by a statutory authority, which is the Burswood Park Board, and not this town, we work collaboratively with the Burswood Park Board. And we did so with regards to the development of the 20-year vision. And for some of you, you may be aware that a master plan was put together starting in 2020 that did have community consultation in it, and it was subsequently revised and turned into the 20-year vision over the last 3 years. There was extensive community consultation, and one of the great things about that 20-year vision is that it was, in my view, both a great balance between an eye on being exciting and innovative about the future, looking at it being a festival precinct, and about it being a forest precinct. And I particularly love the idea that the area that we know as the South Nine, the old golf course, would in the future be a place where an urban forest would grow. That meets and aligns perfectly with the town of Victoria Park's urban forest. To put a street racing motor circuit in there will be piles of asphalt, and it will go down and it will take up important public open space that otherwise would be ripe for planting an urban forest to enhance the tree canopy that already exists out there, but more importantly, a place for understory, which is more increasingly being recognised for its importance in helping both trees to grow, but also improving the quality of our natural environment for the benefit of everyone. The fact that there has not been public engagement and consultation about this announcement beforehand has come as a terrible shock to the people who live in and around the Burswood Park, but also, not unsurprisingly, to a lot of people who don't live near the Burswood Park but love to go there and enjoy using it. And so for those people, they rightly are perplexed as to why their government would make a suggestion that they would do something like this without a proper degree of consultation. For the town, we try to work really closely with all of our key stakeholders. The Burswood Park Board is one of those. We want to be able to see that land used to its highest and best value, and it is almost impossible for me to believe that a motorplex out at Burswood Park could be its highest and best value. I know that it is not for all the people who've reached out to me, for all the people who haven't had a chance to reach out to me, but I know feel exactly the same way. It was what prompted me to take the view that although we are not the decision maker, And in another world, I wish that we were the decision maker for this proposal, but we are not. But we do have influence and we do have a voice, and we are your representatives anyway. And this is an opportunity for us to collectively represent you. We know that it won't replace your voices. Your voices will be crucial going forward if you wish to oppose the Motorplex. But what we can do on your behalf is put our weight behind that, and I encourage all of my fellow elected members to please support this motion. Councillor Anderson, as a seconder, do you wish to be heard?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank all the community members who have taken the time to email me. I haven't had a chance to get back to all of them yet, but the sheer magnitude shows me the concern and actually how people must have felt when the announcement happened. Must have been completely gobsmacked, and I can only imagine that shock. The Burswood Park Board has developed a 20-year vision for the future of the entertainment precinct, an ambitious, long-term strategy that requires careful planning, community input, and significant resources to bring to life. However, the proposed Motorplex development is not included in this vision. A vision of this scale is not created overnight. It takes time, collaboration, and genuine consultation. Despite this, the state government has announced this proposal without considering the Burswood Park Board strategic vision or engaging meaningfully with the surrounding community. This raises a critical concern: the potential loss of valuable public space in such close proximity to the city. Public open spaces are essential to the health and well-being of our community, providing accessible recreational areas, environmental benefits, and a sense of place for residents and visitors alike. I urge this council to support this notice of motion and formally express its concern over the lack of consultation and the potential impact of this development on the long-term vision of Burswood Park and the broader community, and it will send a message that future planning is made with due regard for public interest and strategic foresight. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. I'm going to formally ask, as I always do, for matters that come to Council, is there any dissent? Because then we will move to debate. Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I had some questions which I would like to ask the officers, if possible.
Sure. If you'd like to start with your questions.
The first question is about the timing of this motion to form an opposition to election promise before knowing the business case or the full detail of what that could do to the town. What's thought about the timing from the officer's point of view?
Direct that to the Acting Chief Community Planner, Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, and thanks for the question, Councillor Hamer. With regards to timing, responding to this election commitment is the prerogative of elected members, and administration respects the role of elected members advocating for the local community. We've tried to elaborate on that a little bit more in paragraph 6 of the officer comment in the report. Yep.
And the next question was, is it expected the track will use the majority of existing roads already in place?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yep, while detail is unknown, it is assumed that the track would use portions of some existing roads and also be made up of new track infrastructure.
Yep. Thanks. And is it expected that only one race event will be hosted per year?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. No information has been provided about the number or frequency of motorsport events that would occur.
And do we know anything of the successfulness of other street circuits around Australia like Gold Coast, Newcastle, Melbourne or Adelaide?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Administration is not aware of the level of success of other street circuits or how success is defined, i.e. is that crowd numbers, impact on local economy, etc.
And the public transport that's already in place, is that able to deal with major events up to 50,000 people?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Public transport infrastructure is in place to deal with large crowds at Perth Stadium, although it is worth noting that different events draw different crowd demographics and behaviours that can result in varying public transport usage and patterns.
Sorry, Mayor Vernon, I've just had an indication from the gallery that a lot of people can't hear the questions. If elected members and staff could perhaps be closer to their microphones.
Yep.
Thank you.
For sure. Absolutely.
Sorry.
Councillor Hamer.
Was Was the town aware of any issues with the go-kart events that have taken place in previous years around Optus Stadium or the jet boat racing?
Mr. Dewey?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Not that administration is aware of.
And the last one, would the officers welcome the infrastructure to have more music promotion and touring acts such as cycling, running or other community events?
Mr. Dewey?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. The town supports the activation of Burswood Peninsula consistent with the vision outlined in the Burswood Peninsula District Structure Plan and as per the intent of the Burswood Park 20-year vision. This includes high-level support for activities such as music, cycling and running events, as outlined in your question. Always remembering, though, that all activation events need to comply with the normal requirements of local government, i.e. safe event procedures, noise management, and so our support is contingent on those requirements being met.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Hamer, you indicated you had questions, but I had called for an indication of dissent. Was you putting your hand up an indication of dissent or just that you wanted to ask questions?
Both. I'm happy to speak against first if you'd like.
All right. So if you are in dissent, we will move to debate. So I'll call upon you to speak now against the motion.
Thank you. In most cases, for us elected members, we're making decisions based on having access to all the relevant information. No extra information has been made available by the officers tonight. So essentially, that this motion asks us to form an opinion based on a media release that will put upon to the CEO and the administration about how an election promise that we know very little about, other than the press release which contains a couple of paragraphs and some artist impressions. Surely the right time to oppose or lobby for changes or cancellation is after having all the information and knowing the business case to know how it would benefit or undermine the area fully. This motion, if successful, is essentially telling the Labor Party how to run their election. In not supporting this motion, it is not an endorsement to support V8 car racing. It is simply avoiding the premature and unnecessary business of clashing with what is an election promise by a level of government that we have no control over. In my conversations, I have only heard positivity from the limited detail in the proposed plan in the area. Plus, reaching out to Hannah Beasley's office today, they had been receiving the same concerns from residents, but assured me all the checks and balances like traffic studies, business case, environmental protections would be in place before going ahead with any such project. Currently, as it is only an election promise, no extra information is available or has been sourced. So let's wait until we know the full story and let's let this play out a little bit further until after the election to see if this promise is one of the rare ones that does get kept.
All right. So sorry, members of the public gallery. I know that sentiment is running high, but you need to observe our rules. And so I said at the outset, it isn't part of our rules to permit you to express your dissent or your approval one way or the other. So when elected members speak, due regard and respect has to be paid to their right to express their view. That is part, as someone said, democracy. They want to see it in action. This is democracy in action. Not everybody agrees with everybody else. So in accordance with our formal rules, we've now had a speaker against. I'll ask, is there a speaker for? I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Ife next.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I think it's important that we remember that this isn't a Town of Victoria Park decision. It's not a Burswood Park Board decision. And if this passes tonight, unfortunately, it doesn't mean the racetrack doesn't go ahead. And I'm aware that the public gallery knows that. I just think it's important that we ensure that that is made clear everywhere. However, we are in a position to elevate and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to say elevate the voices of our community. And that is one of the things our community has asked us to do. I like sport. I actually really like sport. But I only like sport where the power is coming from people, not from petrol. And I don't like sport that glorifies cars and glorifies speed and glorifies the use of petrol and fossil fuels in order to get people around. I also have found some data that tells us that people actually drive less safely after they have viewed motorsports. Anyone who's been following the news knows that this has actually been a very difficult time on our roads in terms of safety in the last number of months. And it is of great concern to me that there has been data aligning observation of motorsport with unsafe driving and speeding. And I think that's actually an important consideration for us to bear in mind. The Burswood Park Board's 20-year vision took a lot of work, a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm, and it has taken this idea of this lovely space, this beautiful space, and separated it into useful zones to give us some idea of how it might be used and what might allow the community to get the best use out of this really impressive part of the city. And this area included the Music Bowl, which I think is a really beautiful and important part of the Burswood Park Board's 20-year vision, because the Music Bowl was going to be there, and around the Music Bowl there were going to be lots of trees and a beautiful urban forest. So it allows for an entertainment precinct, but it also allows for beautifying this part of the former golf course that currently doesn't have terribly many trees and currently does hold music events but doesn't have the infrastructure in place to make them frequently easy to put on. So I actually think the 20-year vision is a terrific document and should be informing the decisions that are made around this space. So my argument is the Music Bowl needs to go there. The racetrack does not need to go there. Our community voice needs to be elevated. Our community voice needs to be heard. I have not heard one voice that supports this racetrack, not one. And I've looked in many, many, many places, and I've asked many, 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 many people. We are elected here because our community thinks that we can be their voices on things that matter to them. And so I thank Mayor Vernon for this motion, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know I'm great, but don't clap me.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ife. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak now against the motion? If there isn't anyone who wishes to speak against, is there anyone else who wishes to speak for? Councillor Melrose, you indicated you did.
Thank you. Firstly, I love motorsport. I grew up on it and watched Bathurst pretty much every year for quite a long time, drive a Holden, rah-de-da-da. But I think this particular proposal doesn't make any sense. And if I could go to Councillor Hamer's points that he made, and I think he makes really good points about how we should make our decisions in council. And while I agree with his point, I disagree with it in this context. I think to make a decision on something like this, we should be given the information, and the information should be available to the community to start with. And that wasn't forthcoming. This kind of dropped from the sky, and it was the first I've heard of it, and I always feel like I'm pretty in tune with what's going on around in the city and whatnot. So this has definitely come from nowhere. And there's problems with it because this site is meant to be the home or the future home of tens of thousands of people. The state government's given us a target to fill in terms of infill and density, and the Burswood Peninsula is literally where it's going to happen. So there's, 20,000 people that are going to move into the peninsula. There's 8 or 9 different neighbourhoods in the peninsula that are planned. There's a few that are already there now, the Springs and the peninsula, and we've got Belmont Park happening or about to happen, and there's other areas that haven't yet been planned properly or haven't started yet. But there is so much land. I mean, even in the peninsula area, there's still quite a few vacant blocks that pretty much front where this site will be, and no doubt they'll be fairly decent sized buildings with lots of people inside. And I wonder how such a development like a racetrack could prevent people from moving into an area or put them off moving into an area. And we want people to live in these areas, and I guess if you want to put a racetrack in, you probably should do it first because there's no one there to fight it. But what's the impact of doing that? You know, like who's going to want to live there knowing that these kind of noises and smells and sounds are going to occur? And Councillor Hamer brought up jet boat racing. I'm glad he did because I always keep forgetting about it. But I live in Carlisle next to the train station, and I can hear the jet boat racing from my house so clearly. And I often wonder, is that jet boat racing or is that someone like driving their car terribly? And I always think, no, it's definitely jet boat racing. It happens on the weekend. It's only on the weekend. It's during the middle of the day. It couldn't possibly be cars. But now I think about what kinds of sounds we'll get from a racetrack in the peninsula. And it will be, if not worse, or much more. And, you know, it's not just the peninsula, as the mayor has brought up, and one of our people in our public gallery is from Claysbrook Cove. There's quite a lot of density around the river areas, and this area it's exposed to this site so predominantly. So I think anything of a magnitude of this is going to disrupt and cause problems. it just doesn't feel like it fits. I mean, I get it from a tourist point of view and a economic point of view and a come to the casino afterwards when you're drunk and spend money point of view, but that's the only bit that makes sense. Everything else doesn't make sense. The impact to the environment, the impact to the heritage. You know, we haven't even really unlocked that kind of heritage canal aspect. It's sort of kind of neglected still. And I think that with a greater vision, which should be, you know, decided by structure plans and master plans, not just something random that pops out of the sky, you know, we could deliver something that's really, really great here. And whether it's a motorplex, which may very well just happen because that's the way the world works, or whether it's something a little bit more considerate. There's great options there. It doesn't have to be this. And I feel like motorsport maybe 20 or 30 years ago could have been plonked here, but things have changed and Perth's a beautiful city, and I feel like this is a silly thing to be doing, and it's a bit disappointing to see this come from the Labor Party and it not be consulted to either the community or the town, and just, oh, we'll have to deal with the design aspects later and any of the issues that might come later. That just seems a bit flawed, and I'm very disappointed that has happened the way that it has, and that's the reason why I'll be supporting this notice of motion.
Thanks, Councillor Melrosa. Please, can I now ask, is there anyone else who would wish to speak on the item? Councillor Cruiser.
Only briefly to say that while I understand an interest in seeing the full business case and detailed designs before we make a decision, developing a full business case and detailed designs takes a substantial investment of time and resources, and I do not think that this is a good thing to invest time and resources in for all of the reasons that people have outlined. And secondly, I want to emphasise again that we need to be urgently preparing for climate change and taking action to make our communities more resilient. That means less asphalt, better urban forests, biodiversity, and support for all of that. It does not include motorsports.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Anyone else who wishes to speak on the item? Councillor Miles.
I just want to say that yes, I support this motion. I guess it's an interesting one. As Deputy Mayor, I've said that obviously we don't have any decision-making power, but I think it's important that we use the influence that we do have. On council, we often have decisions that come to us, and the community can be quite polarised, and we can have really, you know, strong voices in both aspects. And this issue is an interesting one in that, I guess, two things. First of all, the decision was dropped and without any consultation, and everyone was very surprised, but also overwhelmingly people want to provide their opinions and also feel that it shouldn't be supported. And so yeah, I don't think there's been a decision that's come to council since my time where the community's been so kind of, whatever the word is, unanimous in their like opinions. So but that aside, I think it's really important that the community is consulted on issues, and I would like for us as a council to be standing with the community on this one, and so I support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Miles. Councillor Devereux.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I also would like to support this motion. As a Banksia Ward councillor, but also from Carlisle, like Peter, it seems sometimes like we're a long way from the river, but sometimes not so far in terms of noise or other elements. I guess I feel drawn to the community of Burswood as well, and I've really appreciated their contact around this issue and the concerns that they've raised. And I guess I've had a personal feel for the community in Burswood, doing yoga there over the last few months, sometimes in the circus, which has been lovely to see individuals, old people, young people, people even bringing 2 children to yoga to do it at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So there really is a great community spirit around Burswood, which I think we cherish in Victoria Park and want to see grow. And I think in terms of tourism and economic development, those are drivers for tourism and economic development. And so there's a future in that. I also often enjoy the community cinema down by the water. The Mayor mentioned the Christmas concert that was there recently as well. We recently also had the new Boorloo pedestrian and cycling bridge open, and I often go along the Burswood foreshore towards the bridge as well. So there are many reasons to enhance and protect the Burswood that we have at the moment, and the racetrack is definitely in opposition to that. I think as well, the other really thing that I cherish about Burswood is the opportunity to actually have nature, to have trees, but to also have a really pedestrian and cycle and public transport accessible place for people. And that is also something very much at the heart of the policies of the town to allow that to happen. So I really think on those grounds we want to push back against this proposal. As Deputy Mayor Ife has said, it's not a decision of council, but certainly we want to add our voice to those who are saying this is not an appropriate place for this action. And I really appreciate the concern of residents to take action, to raise their concerns with us, but also, of course, to raise them with the state government. And it is timely, in a sense, with a state election coming up, for people to have an opportunity to do that now. And I think our voice, amongst other voices prior to the election, is a good opportunity to take that forward. So I also support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Devereux. So all elected members have spoken on the item, and since we do have a dissenter, I will close the debate and I will focus on the arguments put forward by Councillor Hamer. So for those listening, that's not focused on Councillor Hamer, but it's about his argument. He is right, as others have said. The decision about this project going ahead is not this council's to make, but the decision about where we stand on the project is our decision to make. And it is right that we take a stand on it. We cannot go about our business allowing things to be done to the community of our town without saying so and calling it out when they haven't had a chance to have a say, because somebody else is doing it to them and to us. The reason we need to take this stand now ahead of the election, without knowing all of the details about this proposal, is because of the election announcement. It was that this project will go ahead if the WA Labor government is re-elected. That's their promise. They need to hear voices from the community, supported by us, both in the lead up to the election and immediately after it, if they are returned to government, that this is not a project that we support. We have, in my view, a relatively small window of time to make the community's position known. Because if after the election, we know that the election is the 8th of March, there will be a fairly swift forming of a new cabinet, and one of the first order of business will be the adoption of the annual budget for 25-26, and the promise from WA Labor is that construction of the Motorplex will commence in 2025, with a view to it being completed in 2026. That means there is no time to waste. Now, here's the other thing that's important. Councillor Hamer alluded to us not having a lot of information about this, and that we should wait till we do. But isn't it interesting that a proposal of this nature that was announced with a plan showing exactly where the track would be, that there is now information circulating, including coming from politicians at state level, answering frequently asked questions about this, reveals itself to have a level of significant planning that has already been undertaken without you, without your voices being heard. And for that significant level of planning to have been undertaken, and yet no one has disclosed the business case, the environmental impact assessment, the feasibility study, it makes you wonder, how can you plan to start construction of this kind of facility in that shorter window of time after a state election unless you're already well advanced with your plans? And so that's the danger for us if we wait. So the community's concerns, as far as I'm of the view, is that I've heard you. I hope that you've heard tonight that elected members have heard you and that we want to support you. We want to be there to raise that voice with regards to this motorplex and to make it known to our elected representatives, on behalf of your elected representatives and you, that this is a project we don't support and that we will advocate heavily to the WA Labor government, if they are returned, not to pursue this project. So those are the reasons why this is a decision that falls within our purview, whether we support it or not. I accept that not everyone will consider it's a popular decision for a local council to take a decision to oppose a state government proposed piece of infrastructure. But can I say two things with regards to that? On the 2nd of February 2025, Evan Hall, who is the CEO of the Tourism Council of Western Australia, said that major projects were about creating future jobs and prosperity, but some big ticket items like the proposed motorplex at Burswood did not have a lot of value as tourism infrastructure. So you have the head of the Tourism Council pointing to the fact that this type of motorplex infrastructure is not something that has significant tourism value. And it is to be borne in mind that there is a motorplex for supercars at Wanneroo. Indeed, the supercars lobby group itself would say that Wanneroo is its spiritual home in Western Australia. I say, let it stay that way. Let that be the only place that supercars operate. And full disclosure, I love a good supercar action. I like watching it on the television. I even like attending it, but I don't like it in the wrong place. And the wrong place is right next to people's residences. And I will also share this with you, which has been shared with me, a piece of information that comes from a statement of acoustic impact about a development application for supercars in Newcastle. The majority owners of supercars, in conjunction with Destination New South Wales, plan to facilitate and operate a supercar motor race on a 2.6 kilometre circuit around East Newcastle in November 2017. The acoustic impact from these passing race cars is considered to have the potential for permanent hearing damage to occur to residents, including young children, adults, the aged and people with disabilities. To quantify the impact to affected Newcastle residents, predictive computer noise modelling was carried out to validate community concerns about exposure to excessive and continuous levels of noise. The summary of that acoustic impact report was that the proposed racing circuit in Newcastle East would pass within 3.5 metres of many residences. The results of the computer noise modelling predicted that residents would be exposed to maximum sound levels well above the regulations. The most directly affected residents would be exposed to significant decibel levels at their front doors. And the conclusion was that many areas in the peninsula in Newcastle East would exceed 85 decibels, and with many areas exposed to levels greater than 95 decibels. These sound exposure levels are well above the levels of concern for occupational noise. The race exposes residents not only to significant levels of harm and annoyance from noise, but will also disrupt communication, impact local businesses, and potentially cause structural damage to homes from vibration. These sound levels cannot be mitigated, and the exposed population cannot adequately be protected from harm. Therefore, the only alternative is to relocate this proposed supercar race from Newcastle to another more suitable purpose-built location. I think there are some lessons in that, but had we all had shared with us some acoustic impact statements and noise modelling to allow the community to truly understand the impact of this before a decision was made by the WA Labor government to announce this as an election commitment, people might have understood a lot more. At the moment, if we are in the dark, we need to ask ourselves, who has left us in the dark? So, on that, I close the debate and I urge everyone to vote in favour of my notice of motion. I declare the motion is carried. Those in favour, myself, Mayor Vernon, Councillor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Ife, Councillor Melrosa, Councillor Miles, Councillor Cruiser and Councillor Devereux. Those against, Councillor Hamer. I want to thank everyone who has come along tonight to support this motion, to express their views, those who have reached out by telephone and by email, those who have yet to reach out or wish that they'd had enough of an opportunity to reach out, but I know that you'll continue to do so and connect with your communities in the future. And I thank all elected members for your considered views about this and sharing them with Council. So thank you everyone, very much appreciated. Thank you. It is our normal practice that if we've been sitting for 2 hours, we will have a break for 10 minutes. We've now been sitting for just over 2 hours. So I now propose to move a motion that we adjourn for a period of 10 minutes from 8:37 p.m. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Ife. Thank you. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried. So we're now adjourned for 10 minutes. Thank you. And thank you again to those members. All right, everyone. Well, it is 8:48 p.m. and so we're now back in session for the remainder of our meeting. So we're now moving through the rest of the agenda items. So item 11 is the Chief Executive Officer reports. 11.1, the Council Resolution Status Report, has already been dealt with by way of exception resolution. Item 11.2 is an absolute majority item that we must deal with. The recommendation, this relates to the 2025 ordinary local government elections. The recommendation is that Council 1, in accordance with section 4.20 subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1995, declares the Western Australian Electoral Commissioner to be responsible for the conduct of the 2025 ordinary elections for the town of Victoria Park, together with any other elections or polls which may be required, and 2, in accordance with section 4.61 subsection 2 of the Local Government Act 1995, decides the method of conducting the elections will be a postal election. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the officer's recommendation? Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Devereux. Is there any dissent to this item? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 11.3, Town of Victoria Park representative on Burswood Park Board. The recommendation is that Council nominates an elected member or an officer of the town for the consideration of the Minister for Racing and Gaming as the Town of Victoria Park's representative to the Burswood Park Board from 1 August 2025 to 31 July 2027. Can I seek a mover for the recommendation and a seconder, please? And once the item is on the table, we'll then call for nominations for the appointment. Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Cruiser. Thank you. So I'll now call for nominations for appointment as the town's representative on the Burswood Park Board, and I will nominate myself. Is there anyone else who wishes to nominate for appointment to the board? No? There being nobody else who wishes to nominate, on that basis, I will seek to move an amendment to the officer's recommendation. Okay, so the Manager of Governance and Strategy advises me if the mover and seconder simply agree that the recommendation will read that Council nominates Mayor Karen Vernon for the consideration of the Minister and the rest of the words in the resolution. I don't need to move a formal amendment to take account of that. So Councillor Anderson, you're happy with that? Councillor Cruiser as the seconder, you're happy with that? Yes? All right, so that's now the recommendation as moved. So I'm formally going to ask, is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12 is the Chief Community Planner reports. 12.1, application for development approval, addition of car parking space to place of worship, numbers 318 Lot 5, 320 Lot 6 and 322A, 322B Lot 7, Shepparton Road, East Victoria Park. The recommendation appears on pages 23 through to 26 of the agenda report. And I'm not going to read it all out because it is very lengthy, but it is a recommendation that Council approves the application for development approval for the addition of car parking to place of worship at numbers 318, 320 and 322A and B Shepparton Road, East Victoria Park, in accordance with the provisions of the Town of Victoria Park Local Planning Scheme number 2 and the Metropolitan Region Scheme, subject to all of the conditions listed in the officer's recommendation. Can I call please for a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation? Moved Councillor Cruiser, seconded Councillor Anderson. Councillor Cruiser, do you wish to be heard on the application? All right, thank you. Councillor Anderson is the seconder. Do you wish to be heard on the application?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to ask formally, is there any dissent to the officer's recommendation, in which case we will move to debate? No, not seeing any dissent. There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.2, which is application for development approval for a change of use from group dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation, has already been dealt with by exception resolution. Item 12.3, Community Funding Program, Art, Community, Sport Equipment and Urban Forest Grants. Now, it's a very lengthy recommendation in relation to this item, and it appears across pages 52 to 53 of the agenda. Because of its length, I am not going to read it all, but suffice to say it is a recommendation for the awarding of grants for the community, art, sport equipment and urban forest. Can I seek a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation, unless someone wishes to ask me to put the items separately? So we're calling for a mover and a seconder at this stage. Moved Councillor Melrosa, seconded Councillor Cruiser. Councillor Melrosa, did you wish to speak to the item? No. Councillor Cruiser, did you wish to speak to the item? You may ask questions for sure. Okay, and if we could just get you to use your microphone so we make sure the recording is record that.
I do not wish to speak to the item.
All right, thank you. In that case, I'm going to ask formally, is there any dissent? Any of the items? No? There being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.4, Operating Subsidies 2025 to 27 has been dealt with by exception resolution. The same is true for item 12.5, the Mandira Advisory Group Terms of Reference, 12.6, the Business Advisory Group Terms of Reference, 12.7, the Draft Community Benefit Strategy, 12.8, Access and Inclusion Advisory Group Terms of Reference, 12.9, Notice of Motion Options for Permitting Play Equipment on Verges, and 12.10, the Integrated Transport Program Working Group Terms of Reference. Brings us to item 13, which is the Chief Operations Officer reports. The first one is 13.1, the Strategic Waste Management Plan. Now, there is a recommendation in the agenda. However, at the end of the officer's report, there is an alternative officer recommendation. Is there an elected member who wishes to move the alternative officer recommendation that Council do not adopt the Strategic Waste Management Plan that was presented to Council in December 2024? Is there an indication of someone to do that? Councillor Hamer, thank you. That's fine. I will second the alternative officer recommendation. So, Councillor Hamer, did you wish to speak to the matter? No. As the seconder, I don't wish to speak to it. Is there any dissent to the alternative officer recommendation that we not adopt this waste management plan for the reasons effectively set out in the officer report? No, there being no dissent to that, declare the alternative officer recommendation is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13.2, Western Australian Local Government Association Sustainable Energy Project. The recommendation is that Council endorses the engagement of Synergy to provide renewable energy as per a new renewable energy supply agreement under the Energy Sustainability and Renewables Project, effective 1 April 2025 for a 3-year term. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the officer's recommendation? So that's moved Councillor Cruiser and seconded Councillor Hamer. Councillor Cruiser, do you wish to speak to this item?
Not at this point.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hamer, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to the item?
Just a question first, please.
Yes,
Vernon.
sure.
I did send a question in to the officers and got a response, but I won't ask that same question again, but I do thank them for putting that together, and I do appreciate the difficulty in the approximation of what could be in terms and whatnot. But just to recap, the 3 points that I thought were important was the cost of our current contract, the best case of the proposed contract and the worst case, and then that figure of if we had no contract and we had to source power from traditional energy sources or black energy, and those points of difference. Looking at those numbers again, am I correct in the $60,000 mark being the difference between using for the next 3 years black energy or traditional power as opposed to the best case scenario for the renewable energy?
Direct that question to Ms Adams.
Through the Chair, yes. So that's the short answer. There is approximately $60,000 difference. And just to be clear, that's what's termed as black power on the open market, as opposed to the contract, the best contract that we could get for green power.
So having that small price increase when the last 3 years we've had a saving of 300 or so thousand. The background to this, whether the WELGA mentioned they would facilitate a process to reduce the cost of conventional energy and sort a cost-effective solution. The fact that the price is now slightly higher than traditional, does that still tick that box as being fit for what this policy is supposed to achieve?
Ms Adams?
So through the Chair, I think it's probably limiting to just look at it as the monetary value only. So in terms of whether it ticks the boxes, the town has had a policy that we try and do what we can towards our environmental initiatives and sustainability initiatives. So there is a cost for that in this, which has been itemised. So I think it just might be limiting to look at only the cost in terms of the policy.
I do appreciate there are different measurements of how this is successful, but just looking at the cost, do the officers have a price in mind or a ceiling that they would be comfortable with? For example, if the cost went to 100,000 or 200,000 more, would that then sort of reduce the overall effectiveness of having this, or is there a sort of any commentary around that?
Ms Adams?
If the cost, through the Chair, if the cost went up, it would reduce the effectiveness, but that's not something we can guess at. The estimates we've been provided for the length of that 3-year contract do point to, and that's been modelled at 100% uptake, itemised in the report. Probably the greater risk seen by our discussions with WELGA is if everyone doesn't take that up. So all 48 councils don't do that. And then just in speaking to them, it appears that a reasonable lowest point could be 65% uptake. So that's what they've modelled on, the not 100%. So it's actually probably more likely that might occur than we could see marked increases in the energy price.
Sure, and just on that, you might not know the answer, but what would be the possible reasons why other LGAs wouldn't be going ahead? Would that just be on the price, or they have other sources to supply energy which meets those renewable targets?
Ms Adams?
So through the Chair, to date, they've all taken it up. So I haven't got those reasons, and I can guess those same type of reasons. And even in the past, we've received energy offsets from other areas as well. So those options are always there, but the potential for everyone to save substantial amounts by banding together is definitely better.
Just one last question. I'm assuming this would take place, but you can answer the yes or no. This next term, the next 3-year term of this energy contract would obviously, at the end of that 3-year term, we would know what we did actually pay. Would that be able to be reviewed of what the price would have been without that contract, so the council could see how effective that contract was over that period of time when we do know the numbers?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, that's it's actually a really good question, because we've tried to get that modelling for the previous 3 years as well, what our cost would have been, and it's dependent on so many factors. We haven't been able to even make a reasonable guesstimate, because we had committed. So we'd committed to doing green energy. So in terms of whether we could do it, I don't know at the moment if we could do it retrospectively. It would be a guess. We've asked WALGA to assist with that as well, because that really is the comparison that we, would like to make, I think.
Okay, thanks, that's all.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. Did you wish to exercise your right to speak on the item now as the seconder before I call for anyone else who wants to speak?
No, I won't speak at the moment, thanks.
All right, so now I need to formally ask, is there any dissent? So anyone in dissent, this is your chance to speak. No, there's no dissent, so I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13.3, which is the Lathlain Precinct Redevelopment Advocacy Update, that's been dealt with by exception resolution. We come to item 14, the Chief Financial Officer reports. First one is 14.1, the post-year end budget review, 2023-24 final carry forward projects and surplus funds allocation. This is an absolute majority item. Recommendation is that Council approves the final carry forward projects detailed in attachment 14.1.1. 2, approves the surplus funds allocation detailed in attachment 14.1.2. 3, approves the revised budget reverse movements as detailed in attachment 14.1.3. And 4, approves the revised budget statement of financial activity as detailed in attachment 14.1.4. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the officer recommendation? Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Devereux. Councillor Miles, do you wish to be heard? No. Councillor Devereux, so seconded, do you wish to be heard?
No, thanks, Mayor Vernon.
All right, thank you. Do we have any dissent? No, no dissent. Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 14.2, which is Chief Executive Officer Credit Card. 14.3, Schedule of Accounts for November 24. 14.4, Schedule of Accounts for December 24. 14.5, Financial Statements November 24, 14.6, Financial Statements December 24, and 14.7, Award of Insurance and Risk Management Services Contract, have all been dealt with by exception resolution. Item 15 is Committee Reports. 15.1, the Interim CEO KPIs Report of Acting CEOs has been dealt with by exception resolution. And since we do have one of our former acting CEOs with us tonight, Mr. Doy, thank you for the report of your meeting of the interim CEO KPIs. Now, we move to item 15.2, which is the Chief Executive Officer Performance Indicators for 2025. As the CEO has declared a financial interest, I'm going to ask him to leave the council chamber and await our notification that he can return. The recommendation for 15.2 is that the CEO Recruitment and Performance Review Committee recommends that Council 1 confirms the CEO KPI indicators for 2025 as contained in Attachment 1 do not require amendment. 2, undertakes a further review of the CEO KPIs as part of the CEO probation review process. And 3, directs the committee to complete the review in point 2 above at a meeting of the committee on 28 April 2025 at 5 p.m. As the chair of the CEO Recruitment and Performance Review Committee, I will move that motion. Thank you. Or recommendation rather from the committee. Can I seek a seconder, please? Is that seconded, Deputy Mayor Ife? Thank you. I don't wish to speak to the item. Deputy Mayor Ife, do you wish to speak? No. Formally ask, is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 15.3 is the CEO Annual Performance Review 2024-25 selection of external facilitator. The CEO has again declared a financial interest, and I confirm that he remains outside the council chamber at this time. The recommendation is that the CEO Recruitment and Performance Review Committee recommends that council appoints provider A to facilitate 1, the CEO's probation review, and 2, the 2025 CEO Annual Performance Review process, and undertake a remuneration review, and 3, the development of the CEO's KPIs for 2025 to 2026. As the chair of the committee, I will seek to move that committee's recommendation. Can I seek a seconder, please? Seconded, Deputy Mayor Ife. Formally ask, is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Come to item 16. Oh, we can let the CEO come back in. Where's my little buzzer? There it is. Give him a little beep, beep, beep. So hopefully that will work. Otherwise, we might need to ask the council liaison officer to... I think he's gone further afield and is unable to hear our unique little buzzer. We need to have a buzzer with the sound of a motorplex. That will be able to be heard in the room next door and beyond. Ah, here he is. Yes. All right, just for the record, let the CEO know that items 15.2 and 15.3 are passed unanimously in the agenda. Item 16 is applications for leave of absence. The recommendation is that council approves 1, a leave of absence for Councillor Jessie Hamer for the dates 4 March 2025 and 5 August 2025, and 2, a leave of absence for Councillor Peter Devereux for the dates of 28 June 2025 to 2 July 2025 inclusive. Can I seek a mover and a seconder, please, for the recommendation? Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Cruiser. Is there any dissent? No, there being no dissent, declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 18, questions from members without notice. Are there any questions from elected members without notice? No. Deputy Mayor Ife, just as I was about to call it.
I don't normally ask questions without notice, but this popped up today. I put in a elected member's request for information, and I have read the response, and I'm interested to inquire further. This was an inquiry from a community member about whether our electric vehicle chargers downstairs can be used by the community at if they could pay for that use rather than just a free-for-all. And I had a response saying that this might be being considered, and it depends what council decides. And so I'm wondering if I can find out, please, when that is likely to come to us to be discussed further. Thank you.
Direct that question to Ms Adams.
Through the chair, I'll take it on notice. I am obviously aware of that, but there are a few matters that we're trying to find out and also get some consistency from other local governments and Wagga.
Thank you.
There is a EV charging station the town has, which is situated next to the library building in the Leisure Life car park. That's got the same notice on it that it's not currently available to the public, but it's under consideration. So we can add the 3 of them in. That would be good, thank you. Any other questions from elected members without notice? No? All right, thank you. Item 19, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting. We have none. Item 20 is public question time, which I now open at 9:13 p.m, but noting there remain no members of the public gallery. Close public question time at 9:13 p.m. Item 21 is public statement time, which I also open at 9:13 p.m. but close it at 9:13 p.m, there being no members of the public remaining in the gallery. Item 22 is meeting closed to the public. We have no items for which the meeting needs to be closed to the public. So at 9:14 p.m, I declare this ordinary council meeting of the Town of Victoria Park is closed. Thank you everyone for your contributions tonight. We're adjourned. And to those who joined us on live streaming, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Councillors, staff, please be upstanding for Her Worship Mayor Karen Vernon. Thank you.